A few weeks ago, my spouse and I went to an elegant gathering hosted by their company, Ribbled Consulting Inc. The party showcased a significant achievement of one of the firm's seasoned executives. It was a lavish event at a local Hilton Hotel's ballroom. As per usual at such occasions, my wife donned a tasteful little black dress, featuring a modest neckline and a hemline that accentuated her lovely legs. I opted for a simple dark blue suit, paired with a white shirt and tie, which seemed to be the preferred attire for many of the male guests. We walked through the vast room. I couldn't help but be amazed by the number of people present. It appeared there were over 200 attendees already, with more arriving constantly. I was aware that Ribbled Consulting was in a thriving industry. It was evident the company had expanded rapidly over the past year. Still, I never anticipated there would be hundreds of workers and their companions filling the expansive, lavishly decorated ballroom. Sarah had been with Ribald for over 10 years, so I recognized some of her co-workers from previous gatherings. As we mingled, she greeted many people who knew her and introduced me to her work friends I hadn't met before. When the host asked everyone to take their seats, we found our places at a large round table near the front. Soft music played in the background as we conversed with the people at our table, who were mostly younger than us. Despite the age difference, we quickly felt at ease, chatting and laughing with new friends while watching my wife connect with her work acquaintances. After a delightful dinner, Sarah and I attended a few speeches, celebrating an older man's achievements in obtaining a valuable contract. Once the formalities concluded, the CEO of Sarah's company invited everyone to unwind and socialize. The evening featured dancing to a band and a complimentary bar in the spacious room. The band played some classic tunes, much to my relief, avoiding any annoying rap music. As a familiar slow song began, I gently asked Sarah, "Shall we dance, my dear?" Sarah glanced around, ensuring they were the first to start dancing. She then smiled and nodded, prompting her husband to lead her onto the floor. Amidst the dozen other couples, they seamlessly joined the dance, fitting in effortlessly. In our 14-year marriage, we often attended various events. My company held occasional parties, but none as lavish as this grand ballroom. As Sarah's company expanded, they hosted events more frequently, from casual happy hour gatherings at a local bar to extravagant parties like this one. Sarah viewed these frequent celebrations as a perk of her job and an opportunity to connect with influential colleagues. I would accompany her and relish the complimentary food and drinks. During the evening, Sarah and I spent most of our time together. Occasionally, she was invited to dance by other guests, but she usually declined. We both valued our strong bond and knew that disloyalty was out of the question. This understanding allowed us to enjoy our time without any concerns. My wife appeared happy, and I was pleased for her. In her 40s, my slender blonde wife maintained a good figure and enjoyed dancing. She remained an appealing woman, and I cherished her, despite her playful nature. Men often noticed her, but I considered it harmless and assumed she'd attract attention wherever we went. As a 40-year-old man in good shape, I never felt envious of her having a good time, even if she danced with others. As the night progressed, my joyful mood took a slight dip. Sarah had just returned from the dance floor, her face slightly flushed, and a glass of wine in her hand. We sat in comfortable silence, watching the dancers below. It was then that I sensed someone approaching from the crowded floor. A tall, broad-shouldered man appeared, moving with purpose towards our table. Amidst the loud music, he offered me a smirk before turning his attention to my wife. He extended his hand, expecting an immediate response. Taken aback by his arrogant gesture, I turned to Sarah, intending to ask who this stranger was, only to find her staring at him with a peculiar expression on her face. As soon as I heard it, my suspicions were raised. I hadn't encountered that particular expression in a long time, but I recognized it instantly. That expression, meant for her spouse, was something I had only seen aimed at me during our early days as a married couple. However, during the beginning of our marriage, I had noticed Sarah's smitten gaze directed at a young man at a post-work gathering. Later, I discovered that she had been involved in an inappropriate relationship with him. At a recent gathering, I noticed a friend giving me a curious look. A few weeks later, we met up at a coffee shop with her friends, and the same guy from the party was there too. Throughout the evening, she seemed to drink more than usual. When the guy asked her to dance, she flashed a playful smile, and they danced quite closely. I pretended to be a bit off balance and excused myself, secretly watching them from a distance. Later, when she thought I was too out of it to notice, she slipped away with him through a back entrance. I discovered her in the guy's car, sharing a passionate moment and allowing him to touch her gently. I couldn't be sure how far they went or how far she intended to go, but it seemed like they were on the brink of stepping into uncharted territory. I allowed her to engage in inappropriate behavior and addressed the issue when she returned home. I expressed my intention to end our marriage if she didn't cut ties with her mistress's boyfriend. She was shocked that I was aware of her actions and expressed sincere apologies. She assured me of her love and maintained that the guy was merely a source of amusement from her past. She insisted they never crossed the line, had already ended things, and promised it would never happen again. Sarah and I were married, but I struggled to trust her after learning about her past actions. Our relationship faced challenges, but therapy helped us rebuild our marriage. However, I noticed a concerning look on her face that wasn't directed towards me. Sarah looked hopeful as she reached for her partner's hand. Her expression was a mix of excitement and anticipation, but not quite a smile. Her eyes sparkled with happiness as she accepted the invitation, stood up, and left the table with him, not once glancing back at me. As I remained seated, feeling a bit left out, the tall man held Sarah's hand and led her onto the dance floor with a sense of accomplishment. Meanwhile, the other couples at the table watched with curiosity, just as interested in the unfolding scene as I was. At the lively gathering, I exchanged uneasy glances with my table mates. The couple beside me hastily left for the bar, while the woman next to me guided her husband to the dance floor. Curious glances were exchanged among those still seated, but no one offered any clarification. Jealousy stirred within me, but I suppressed it. I convinced myself that my doubts were unfounded. Sarah and I were devoted to each other. At a recent party, she had danced with several men. Besides a single incident long ago, she had always been a loyal and devoted spouse and partner. I believed that after all these years, she understood that I wouldn't tolerate any foolishness. My jealousy faded for a moment. Our strong, loving marriage had been built over the years. Watching my slender, middle-aged wife dance a fast song with her tall partner, I noticed her admiring glances at his face. Sarah is a good dancer, and her graceful movements captivated the room. When the song ended, I was relieved, expecting her to thank the man and return to our table. Instead, as the next slow, romantic song began, they continued to dance, their embrace never breaking. I hesitated to interrupt them. Instead, I decided to observe from a distance. Her actions showed that she didn't value my thoughts. As the man held her close, his hands inadvertently moved near her waist, causing their bodies to sway together. She didn't protest his touch or the closeness of their dance. On the contrary, she appeared to be thoroughly enjoying herself. It was clear that her admiration was solely for her tall dance partner. I felt frustrated, but knew that if she was engaging in inappropriate behavior again, I would learn about it soon enough. Sarah and her partner moved deeper into the bustling dance floor. Though I couldn't see them anymore, I had a feeling they were doing something she didn't want me to see. When the slow song ended, another one began immediately. As expected, Sarah didn't return. It took 5 more songs for the dance floor to thin out before I spotted my flushed, giggling wife, still wrapped in a tight hug, dancing with her friend. As I waited impatiently for her return, some of the couples from our table came back, looking sheepish and acting embarrassed. Unable to contain my curiosity, I asked the woman next to me, "Who is the tall guy that Sarah is dancing with?" I knew the woman worked with Sarah. She looked a bit agitated at my question. Her expression softened, and she sighed in resignation before answering. "That's Mr. Jackson. He's the new assistant director of sales who started a few months ago." "Jackson, huh? Does he have a first name?" "Trayvon. Trayvon Jackson. Sarah works for him now." "He's her boss?" I asked, surprised. "How long has she worked for him?" "I haven't seen him in a while," the woman remarked. "He started working here a few months ago. An ex-college athlete, maybe football. He's from another office and seems to be the CEO's favorite. Since he joined, he's taken over a department and is quickly climbing the corporate ladder." The woman then mentioned she needed to use the restroom and excused herself, likely to avoid further conversation. The music continued to play, this time a lively tune. As I surveyed the dance floor, which had become less crowded, I couldn't spot Sarah. Then, I looked around the room and noticed her sitting at Mr. Jackson's table, across from the dance floor. Sarah had stepped away to chat with her friend Trayvon, leaving me feeling left out. I noticed there were several couples at the table, sharing laughter and stories. I approached the table and saw that they were enjoying some drinks, with empty shot glasses scattered around. As I got closer, I heard Sarah's voice, but it sounded a bit off, as if she had been drinking too. As she noticed me, her laughter faded, and she quickly sobered up. "Hi, honey," she called out, trying to hide her previous state. "Are you having fun, Carl? Sorry to leave you alone, darling. I'm just having a drink with my friends. Have you met Trayvon yet?" I hesitated, unsure of how to act. Should I pretend to be oblivious and ignore her dismissive attitude, or should I confront her in front of her friends and her boss? I chose a middle ground, appearing stiff and giving her a passive, curious look. "No, I haven't." Sarah, chagrined, stood up and walked over to me. She introduced me to her table mates, but none of them stood or shook my hand. They just waved and seemed amused by my presence. When she introduced Jackson, he squeezed my hand too hard and barely nodded before returning to his conversation. The girl beside him giggled at the subtle insult. Without reacting to his comment, I calmly stated, "It's getting late, Sarah. I'm tired and ready to go." Sarah appeared taken aback and slightly annoyed. Meeting her gaze, I inquired, "Are you coming with us, dear?" "Already? It's only been a few hours," she exclaimed, sounding slightly tipsy. "I'm leaving now," I insisted. With a frown, she replied, "I don't want to leave just yet, Carl. It's still early. Why don't you go back to the table and I'll join you in a few. I want to chat with Trayvon about something." I couldn't help but feel suspicious about Trayvon. Not Mr. Jackson. She seemed quite friendly with a coworker, ignoring me, dancing with him for the last half hour, and sharing a few drinks at his table. It didn't appear to be a typical work relationship. Carl's frustration grew, but he held back from expressing it. Instead, he shrugged and gave Sarah a dismissive look. "Go ahead, Sarah. I'm leaving." Turning away, he heard snickers from behind. "I'll take you home, Sarah," someone offered. Carl quickly headed to the exit, keys in hand. He knew Sarah would need her purse before leaving. As he neared the parking lot, he heard his wife's high heels clicking on the pavement. "Carl, wait!" she called angrily. She finally caught up, grabbed my arm, and tried to pull me around. I quickly pulled away, almost causing her to lose her balance. I hurried to the car, walking so fast that she struggled to keep up in her high heels. "Just get in," I said tersely as I opened my door. I unlocked her door after settling into the driver's seat. Usually I'd open her door as a gentleman should, but tonight I was too upset and just waited for her to trot around the car and open her own door. She slid into her seat, her voice shrill. "That was so rude!" she exclaimed. "What's the matter with you, Carl? Everybody was laughing at how you behaved. I have to work with those people, you know. It's not even that late yet, and the band is still playing. What's wrong anyway?" At the party, I couldn't help but notice Sarah's intense focus on her dancing with a group of people. I tried to avoid mentioning my suspicions about her feelings for her boss, so I mumbled something about being tired and not enjoying the event. Sarah took offense to my impolite behavior and argued with me for a bit, but eventually dropped it. The rest of the ride home was filled with tension. That night marked the beginning of our issues. For the remainder of the weekend, Sarah acted distant, and we barely spoke. When I inquired about her new job, she frowned and made it clear she didn't appreciate my disrespectful comments about her boss. It seemed that she held him in higher regard than I did. Over the next week, things became slightly better. Sarah continued to hide her feelings for her boss, but I could tell from her expression that she was indeed developing a crush. She revealed that she had been reassigned to work in his department as his assistant, without mentioning him because she assumed I wasn't interested in such trivial matters. She was likely correct in that assumption. However, that changed after witnessing her longing gaze and the way they seemed to be sharing a moment while dancing at the hotel. Over the next few weeks, things settled down. Our intimate moments occurred occasionally, but there was little emotion involved. It wasn't truly making love. I hoped Sarah would understand my concerns about cheating and respect my feelings. When we finally discussed her inappropriate behavior at the party, she became irritated and defensive. "You're just being childish, Carl," she accused. "I've always danced with other men at parties, and you never minded before." "Your boss is different," I explained. "The way you two were dancing that night, his hands were wandering a bit too much, and you didn't seem to object." "Oh, you poor thing," she chuckled. "Maybe I did let him touch my shoulder. But so what? It meant nothing. Just a bit of camaraderie, you know. You sound so concerned. Are you going to worry every time I chat with someone now?" "No, just her. I don't like the way she acts around you." "You mean because she's an outgoing younger woman that notices I'm not so old or so bad looking?" she countered. Or is it some cultural difference you don't like her because she's Asian? Her playful grin was hard to swallow. She knew very well that I was no prejudiced. I just hated to see her acting like a close friend around someone who seemed to be interested in getting into her circle of friends. Hey, don't let your curiosity get the best of you. Trayvon has been a fantastic boss, and I'm grateful for the opportunities he's given me. He even mentioned a possible raise, which was a pleasant surprise. She paused, then continued. Oh, and there's another thing. I'll be going on a customer visit with Trayvon and a couple of other sales reps in just a couple of weeks. It's quite sudden, I know, but it's all set for the week after next. We've been planning this for a while, she confessed. I was going to share it with you after the gathering, but you seemed down, so I held off. I waited until you got past your temporary mood to tell you. So you and Trayvon are going, huh? That's convenient, I retorted. I suppose you two will have plenty of time to socialize and enjoy yourselves while you're away from your ordinary spouse. How long is this trip anyway? Sarah shot me a resentful look and said, We leave on Wednesday and should return Sunday morning. Why not come back on Friday night? We have an important meeting with a customer on Saturday. I believe they'll be signing a significant contract with us, and Trayvon will be the lead representative for our company. It's a big opportunity, and he says he needs me there to help with various tasks. Ugh, Sarah, don't you see that guy is just trying to, well, you know. Trayvon is not trying to do anything inappropriate. You're just being jealous. A jealous fool, huh? Listen, my loving wife, I want you to go to work tomorrow and ask HR for a transfer out of his department. He's up to no good, and I won't let him ruin our marriage. Her eyes widened in surprise. I don't think she expected that. I won't do it, Carl. This is the best job I've ever had, and I won't give it up. Sarah's determination was evident. Oh, come on, Carl pleaded. You need to see reason. I'm not quitting just to make you feel better. I've earned this opportunity, and I'm not going to let it go, Sarah insisted. Trayvon respects me, and I'm not going to do anything to jeopardize that. With that, Sarah ended their conversation and walked out of the house, purse in hand. She got in her car and started driving away. Carl, still trying to talk things through, chased after her. Where are you going? He called out. We need to keep talking about this. Sarah didn't respond, focusing on the road ahead. Oh, we are definitely going out to dinner with Mary, she said with determination. I hope you'll stop being so insecure and we can have a better conversation later. With that, she walked away, leaving me feeling down in my recliner. As our relationship deteriorated, arguments and doubts filled the air. Could I trust her not to cheat again? The saying, once a cheater, always a cheater, lingered in my mind. After years together, it was hard to imagine she'd make the same mistake. Yet, witnessing her with her boss and the way she looked at him left me feeling uneasy. She showed no concern for my feelings. In this revised scenario, the suspicious husband decides to hire a private investigator to follow his wife, suspecting she is having an affair. The PI discreetly places a hidden camera in her hotel room to gather evidence. The husband then consults a lawyer to discuss his options for legal action. Without the means to hire an expensive PI or possessing any martial arts skills, the husband is left to rely on the evidence collected and the legal system to address the situation. The focus remains on the husband's efforts to uncover the truth and seek justice, without resorting to physical confrontations. I sensed something was off in my marriage, even though I didn't have concrete evidence. My wife's odd behavior and her growing closeness with her coworker, Jackson, made me suspicious. We were locked in a silent battle over her job, both of us stubborn and unwilling to back down. I accused her of having a bad attitude and being too flirty, while she resented my accusations and my unwillingness to trust her. Tensions were high as we prepared for her trip with Jackson. The weekend before her trip, her attitude towards me became gentler. During our meals, she spoke kindly and made an effort to be more considerate. She returned home punctually, and if there was no dinner prepared, she would cook for us both. After work, she changed into more casual, revealing outfits, such as tight shorts and low-cut tops. It had been nearly 2 weeks since we last had sex, and I was definitely feeling the desire. I noticed her wearing these clothes around the house, realizing she was likely trying to seduce me before her trip. This way, she could leave without any guilt. I couldn't help but admire my wife Sarah's understated beauty. She wasn't a supermodel, nor was I a Hollywood heartthrob. However, Sarah was intelligent, attractive, and her slender figure was still appealing for a 42-year-old woman. She had firm breasts, a relatively flat stomach, and long, shapely legs, which were often on display in her short shorts. I was frustrated that she couldn't see my perspective and longed to restore the loving marriage we once had. I debated whether to give in or to pout and hold out until she agreed with me. The thought that troubled me most was that if we didn't have sex, she'd be so aroused on her trip that she'd be vulnerable to a sleazy guy like Jackson taking advantage of her. On the eve of her departure, we finally gave in and shared an intimate moment. Our passion was intense, and the connection between us was undeniable. As we embraced, we found comfort and solace in each other's arms, cherishing the time we had left together. My concerns remained unresolved as she started packing her luggage on a Wednesday morning before her trip. At exactly 9 o'clock, a taxi arrived to transport her to the airport. Although I wished to chauffeur her, work obligations prevented me from doing so. I deliberately left a bit later to share a goodbye kiss and wish her well. Despite my inner apprehension, there was nothing more I could do. As her belongings were placed in the taxi, Sarah turned to me with a puzzled expression. "Don't worry, Carl," she reassured me. "I love you, my dear. Last night was incredible, and I appreciate your trust in me. You have nothing to fear." "I hope so," I responded sincerely. "I love you too, sweetheart. I'll miss you greatly." "Of course, my dear. I won't be jealous. I trust you. It's just a work trip, and I know you'll be back soon. We can pick up right where we left off last night." As she drove away, a tight knot formed in my chest. I couldn't help but worry about her boss, who seemed suspicious. I hoped she'd stay vigilant and not let him interfere with our beautiful relationship. Wednesday night was challenging. Sarah noticed my uneasiness and called me twice that day. Once upon her arrival at the hotel, and again in the evening after sharing a meal with her colleagues. We avoided discussing her difficult boss. Instead, we chatted about her pleasant hotel room and her excitement for the upcoming client negotiations. She expressed gratitude for the trust her boss placed in her and her determination to perform well. I responded casually with, "That's nice." We expressed our love and ended the call. I struggled to fall asleep that night. On Thursday, work was a struggle. I made mistakes on a few orders, and my manager scolded me. I hated making errors, but I was preoccupied with Sarah's upcoming trip. At home, my wife called, and we exchanged "I love yous" until we both laughed. Her voice brought me comfort. Friday was unbearable. My manager pointed out more mistakes, and he wasn't happy. I claimed to be unwell and was told to leave, as I was useless that day. I went home early, determined to focus on my personal life. On the way home, I called Ribald Consulting to reach Trayvon Jackson. His secretary informed me he was away on a business trip, returning Monday. As a family friend, I wanted to pass on an important message. She denied providing his cell number, but revealed the residence inn where he was staying. I found the hotel's contact information online. Unable to afford a comprehensive investigation of my wife's activities during her trip, I decided to use a credit card with sufficient funds to purchase a Saturday morning airline ticket. Although I wanted to book one for Friday night, all the flights were fully booked. I believed that spending time with Sarah on Saturday night would be enough to alleviate my concerns about her actions. Nervous and anxious during the flight, I noticed the flight attendant giving me a curious look, likely questioning my uneasy demeanor. Upon arriving, I rented a small compact car at the airport and reached the Residence Inn by 11 in the morning. Sarah had always seemed busy with her clients, even on weekends. I thought she was working hard until I spotted her by the pool. There she was, wearing a small bikini, relaxing with a drink, and her boss. Trayvon, a colleague, was also there, chatting and enjoying a drink. The scene was unexpected, and my heart felt a bit heavy. Sarah and Trayvon, along with another couple, were enjoying each other's company. Trayvon, the boss, was sharing a funny story, causing laughter all around. Sarah seemed to be enjoying herself, but appeared a bit tipsy, even in the morning. I parked my car on the opposite side of the building and stealthily approached the entrance. I discreetly asked the receptionist for a room key to Sarah's room, showing her my driver's license for verification. "Enjoy your stay, Mr. Sorensen." She smiled warmly. I forced a polite response. "I will, thank you." Then I headed to her room. Upon entering, my suspicions were confirmed. Sarah claimed she was sharing with another woman, but it was clear that wasn't the case. Men's clothing like ties and suit jackets were scattered around, and I noticed Sarah's belongings mixed with unfamiliar items, such as some alluring lingerie. The beds were already made, indicating the maid had already been there. I glanced out the window, where I saw people enjoying the pool area. A mix of families and individuals were having a good time. Sarah and her group caught my attention. She was sipping a drink and appeared to be having a great time. Another couple nearby, a white woman, and a younger black man seemed to be enjoying themselves as well. Although I didn't know them, I couldn't help but feel uneasy about their presence. My wife seemed so at ease, which made me uncomfortable. Sarah shifted onto her stomach, donning a casual swimsuit that was unanticipated for the family-oriented location. Trayvon spread sunscreen on her back, and they exchanged a warm smile. The two groups carried on with their sunscreen application, chuckling and relishing the bright day. I browsed through the room for a while. I glanced through her luggage, and was surprised by the numerous lacy undergarments, dresses, and nightgowns she had brought. It seemed like she was preparing for a formal event. In Trayvon's suitcase, I discovered a 12-pack of condoms, with only 4 remaining. If he wasn't sharing them, he had been with my wife. This thought sparked an idea. In the lobby, I inquired about a sewing kit, and the receptionist directed me to a nearby vending machine with travel essentials. I bought one and returned to my room. Meanwhile, Sarah and her friends were still by the pool. I carefully pricked tiny holes in their condoms, which were unlikely to be noticed. Since Sarah didn't use pills, she relied on a diaphragm and spermicide for birth control. I searched her luggage and found her contraceptive device. I carefully poked 3 tiny holes in the side rim of the device. Next to it was a can of spermicide, which I emptied into the toilet and flushed. I didn't want to completely drain the can, so she might not notice it had been tampered with. I left just enough for her to get a small amount before it ran out. I hoped they would be too preoccupied to worry about it. I thought that the lack of spermicide would increase the chances of pregnancy. Although I couldn't be certain, I hoped my plan would work. I subtly damaged the curtain rod, leaving a small gap. I hoped the couple would be so engrossed in their passion that they wouldn't notice the partially open curtain. When I left home, I simply sought to confirm Sarah's loyalty and assuage my concerns. Discovering her infidelity, however, fueled my desire to sabotage their trip. My nerves prevented me from thinking fast enough to execute a well-thought-out plan, like setting up hidden cameras or stealing Trayvon's company credit card and making unauthorized charges. Regrettably, I had limited time to act and had to escape before my presence was revealed. I relocated my vehicle to a more private location and spent some time observing. From my vantage point, I could see the pool area and spent an hour watching as my wife and another man enjoyed drinks, shared laughter, and played in the pool, appearing to be deeply in love. To avoid drawing attention or causing any issues, I decided not to stay for too long. I couldn't help but smile when the 4 friends returned to their hotel room. It was mid-afternoon, and I couldn't help but wonder what they were up to. I quietly climbed a ladder to peer into their window. As I suspected, they were indeed spending time together. Sarah and Trayvon were laughing and chatting on the bed by the window, while the other couple was engaged in a friendly game of cards on the other bed. The atmosphere was light and fun, with no indication of any inappropriate behavior. I decided to mind my own business and enjoy the peaceful scene. Broad daylight, I knew I was taking a risk. Yet, in less than 15 minutes, no one seemed to notice me standing there. I pretended to check the wall, acting casual. The audience remains captivated, intrigued by the unfolding mystery. I heard a loud noise coming from inside. Before I left, I peeked in and saw my friend Sarah, who seemed to be in an intense situation. 2 guys were with her, and it was clear that things were getting heated. Trayvon was in front of her, holding her short blonde hair and forcefully pushing his big private part into her face. The other guy was relentlessly thrusting into her private part from behind. A third woman was sitting on the bed, watching the scene unfold with a smirk on her face. Sarah was laughing and screaming in excitement as she experienced this wild encounter. It made me wonder if this was her first time in such a situation. Sarah pretended to stumble, appearing unsteady on her feet. Her friends caught her, gently laying her down on the bed. They changed positions, continuing their playful antics. Trayvon knelt nearby, helping to keep her legs apart, while they engaged in light-hearted banter. Sarah, with her head hanging off the edge of the bed, laughed and exclaimed, "Wow, this is so much fun! Keep it up, guys!" Her joyful laughter was suddenly replaced by a gasp as the other person approached. She went from expressing happiness to catching her breath and coughing in a matter of moments. Tears welled up in her eyes as she struggled to keep up with the unexpected advance. Despite the challenges, she continued to face them head-on. Witnessing the situation, a mix of emotions filled my heart, and I couldn't help but feel a sense of sadness. I disengaged the recording device and quietly left the area, not wanting to draw attention to myself. I returned home and sat in my comfortable recliner, watching TV. Sarah's taxi arrived outside our house. I had been preparing myself all day to maintain a normal demeanor and not raise any suspicions. When she walked in, she appeared to be in high spirits. I stood up and embraced her warmly, welcoming her back. She exclaimed, "Oh, my darling, I missed you so much." I inquired, "Did you have a good trip, honey?" "Oh, yes," she replied enthusiastically. "It was enjoyable. It was also profitable for our company. We secured an exclusive contract with them." She continued, "The trip was great, but I missed you so much." "I missed you too, Sarah," I said with a smile. She gave me a playful grin, pushed out her chest, and batted her eyes. "I hope you did well, Sarah. We have some unfinished business to discuss," he said in a calm manner. "I know this journey was challenging for both of us. I'm glad we supported each other. I missed you too, and hope we can find a way to connect again. I'm glad we're back together. I have a surprise for you tonight. I saved up my energy, and I hope you're ready for it," she said with excitement. "That sounds interesting. Let's focus on reconnecting and enjoying our time together," he replied, gently taking her suitcase and leading the way towards their shared destination. I ascended the stairs and placed the item on the bed. Sarah attempted to embrace and kiss me, making her intentions clear. I only returned her hug and gently pulled away, leaving the room for her to unpack alone. She appeared somewhat puzzled by my distance. I had already prepared a meal for her, which she appreciated. It seemed she had expended a lot of energy during her encounter with Trayvon and his friend. She recounted her trip and the meetings she attended. Not surprisingly, there was minimal mention of her boyfriend and boss, who happened to be African American. Perhaps she thought I would disapprove, so she chose not to bring him up. Sarah thanked me for not questioning her trip and allowing her to gain valuable experience in business negotiations. I remained silent, keeping my true feelings to myself. Sarah seemed eager for me to join her in bed, possibly to ease her guilt. However, I had no intention of accepting leftovers from those other guys. I couldn't bring myself to place my intimate self into that unclean space, regardless of protection. Following dinner, I informed Sarah that I needed to complete some work in my office. She appeared uncertain about my words, unaware of the rejection she faced. I knew she hadn't anticipated this outcome. Her body was already satiated, and her desires were not overwhelming. She merely agreed to wait for a later time. I would have struggled to fend her off without some assistance. So after dinner, I poured us each a glass of wine. Sarah gratefully accepted her glass. We sat on the sofa, and I turned on the TV. She settled down next to me, sipping her wine and resting her head on my shoulder. I patiently waited for the wine to take effect. I knew she would be exhausted after her long journey with the others. However, I couldn't guarantee she'd be drowsy enough to stop her advances. When we finished our first glass, I refilled both our glasses. This time, I discreetly added 2 sleeping pills to hers. She didn't even manage to finish the second glass before drifting off to sleep. She attempted to keep her eyes open and even reached out to touch me, but it was futile. By 10 o'clock, she was fast asleep. While she was asleep, I carefully removed her clothes and approached her. I whispered sweet nothings in her ear, gently waking her up. She looked at me, slightly confused, as I gave her a reassuring smile. I told her that I had a surprise for her and asked if she would like to participate in a playful game. She hesitated for a moment, but agreed. We began a fun and engaging activity that involved role-playing and acting out different scenarios. She was fully involved and enjoyed every moment of it. We laughed, played, and shared a memorable experience together. In the morning, she woke up with a smile on her face, feeling refreshed and happy. We exchanged warm glances and went about our day, cherishing the special moment we shared. "Yeah, it was wonderful," I exclaimed excitedly. "I thought you were too tired for our usual activities. But when you woke up, I was eager after all those days without you." I gave her a gentle, uncertain look. "I hope you're not upset with me for moving forward like that." "Oh no, Carl," she responded with a smile. "I enjoyed it too. Feel free to continue anytime you'd like, dear." We shared a warm embrace. Over the next few weeks, I continued to spend time with Sarah. We would share juice and talk late into the night. I made a point to reject her advances whenever she showed interest in taking our relationship further. I knew she was involved with her boss, and I wanted her to rely on him for her needs. On the nights when she grew sleepy, I would gently hold her and pretend to reach a peak. She always seemed to understand and would tell me I could have her whenever I wanted. This arrangement worked well for both of us. In order to cope with my wife's infidelity, I found myself resorting to a regular routine. I wanted to ensure that I could resist her attempts to seduce me. Despite her continued attractiveness, I was consumed by anger and resentment. The thought of her being with another man, particularly her boss, filled me with rage. However, I refused to let those images define our relationship, and instead focused on finding a way to move forward and reclaim my life. After her return, I pretended to be a normal husband. It was challenging, as I knew our marriage was nearing its end. I couldn't trust her after her betrayal, and I was determined to end things. I acted oblivious, and we had casual conversations over dinner, discussing her day and making plans for the weekend. We even went out for dinner and dancing a few times. We talked about her job and our career goals, but there were no more discussions about quitting or transferring departments. She never brought it up again, and I let it go. After her weekend trip, we continued our affectionate behavior. I needed to maintain normalcy so she wouldn't suspect my plans. When we were out, I held her hand and opened doors for her. At home, I'd massage her back, her feet, or hold her, gently caressing her neck. She enjoyed it. There was no heavy making out, but occasionally I'd kiss her after she brushed her teeth before going to bed. That was the only time, as I worried about her other relationships and what might be happening in her private life. A month later, she informed me about another business trip. I clenched my teeth and suppressed my frustration, knowing she would likely be unfaithful again. Maintaining a calm demeanor, I didn't inquire about Trayvon's attendance. Without any confirmation, I assumed he would be there. I feigned sadness at her leaving, but I wasn't as insistent about her not going as I had been before her first trip. By now, I acknowledged that she was involved in an affair, and no amount of persuasion would yield any admissions. It pained me to see her discard 14 years of a contented marriage, but there was nothing I could do to change that. What Sarah didn't know was that I had already contacted a lawyer. I carefully moved our shared funds into an account in my name only. I was prepared to sever our credit cards, cell phone service, and any other joint financial arrangements between us. She believed she was outsmarting me as she planned to be intimate with her boyfriend. But this time, I was ready. I consulted with my lawyer about the best time to serve her. He suggested during her trip. However, I chose to do it before her trip, at her office where her coworkers could witness it. I still recall the sympathetic glances from my coworkers at the company party that night. They thought I was a clueless fool, unaware that my wife was betraying me. We'll see about that. She had a trip planned for Wednesday. To guarantee she saw the message, I carefully handed her a package at her workplace on Monday. The package included several incriminating photos taken from a video. The photos left no doubt about her unsuitable connection. The protagonist discovered their spouse's affair with her boss and decided to take legal action against the company for alienation of affection. Evidence, including photos and descriptions of their adulterous activities during a business trip, was presented to draw attention to the situation. A lawsuit was filed against the company for violating the morals clause in the spouse's contract, and several co-workers provided affidavits to support the claim. On Monday morning, the protagonist received a call from their wife. Sarah's voice filled the room as she shouted, "You insensitive jerk!" "Good morning, dear. What have you done now?" she asked, her voice trembling with anger. "You're such an inconsiderate man." "I'm just trying to make you face the truth, Sarah," I replied, my voice filled with bitterness. "You've been cheating on me for months, haven't you?" She hesitated for a moment before answering, "Carl, I don't know what you're trying to say." "I'm saying you want to replace me with him. Do you love him?" "Love him?" she cried out, clearly shocked by the question. "I can't believe you're accusing me of that." "Well, do you?" I demanded, my voice raised. She let out a hearty laugh, then said, "Oh, that's quite a joke, you silly person. I don't love him, you know. I've always loved you. Trayvon's just helping me with my career. That's it. He's not important to me. Nothing." With a more gentle voice, she added, "We can work through this. Don't do this to us. There's no need for a divorce." She paused. "I just lost my head for a moment, honey. Let's talk about this. Please don't do anything hasty, baby. I'm coming home right now so we can discuss it." "Don't bother, Sarah. I don't want to see you. I had the locks changed and your key won't work. Stay away from me and my life. You'll find an order of protection against you and your boss in the paperwork. Please, let's talk, Carl. We can get past this. I know I made a mistake, but you can't just kick me out after everything we've been through. I warned you, Sarah. You didn't listen, and now you're gone. I hope you learn your lesson. But I'll always love you, Carl. I'll call you back." "Wait, Sarah. Someone's telling you to go. We'll talk later. Remember, I love you." As I was about to say more, I heard noises on Sarah's end. A man's voice told her to accompany him somewhere. I assume her management team has seen my lawsuit and is now intervening. The phone call ended abruptly, and my marriage came to an end. Tears welled up as I thought of the love I had for her. Despite the mistreatment, it was hard to imagine life without her. The urge to drown my sorrows in alcohol was strong, but I knew it wouldn't help. Later, I learned that Trayvon Jackson, a former athlete, lost his job. He had been transferred to Sarah's office following a sexual harassment issue at his previous workplace. The CEO wanted to give him a chance, but after the lawsuit, they decided to cut their losses and let him go. Sarah was let go from her job after a few more days. Rumors about her affair circulated, causing concern over the company's public image. When she attempted to enter the house, a neighbor intervened, calling the police. They knew about the protection order, and Sarah's arrest was imminent. To avoid trouble, she reluctantly left the scene. The situation escalated when my lawyer claimed our lawsuit was about adultery. At first, Sarah's attorney tried to counter that there was no evidence of an affair, suggesting it should be due to irreconcilable differences. That's when my lawyer revealed he had already sought a court injunction for a paternity test. Sarah appeared shocked and furious, even attempting to slap my lawyer for the accusation. I couldn't help but laugh. Although we weren't certain if she was pregnant, I knew her boss had been involved with her. Since I never allowed any of my sperm to be inside her, if she was pregnant, it wasn't my child. In the midst of a tense divorce, a couple found themselves at an impasse regarding the division of their assets and alimony. The husband, determined to secure a larger share, withheld a potentially damaging video as leverage. The wife's lawyer, however, confident in his position, countered with an offer of only half the assets and a requirement for alimony. The couple, unwilling to back down, decided to wait the process out. 2 weeks passed, and we received a proposal from Sarah's attorney. She was expecting a child and claimed I was the father. They demanded equal division of assets and potential alimony, or else we'd face a judge's decision. Sarah's lawyer managed to lift the protection order, allowing her to enter their shared home to collect her belongings. With a sheriff present, Sarah retrieved half of their money and left within an hour, as agreed upon. 6 weeks later, Sarah called Carl with a more amicable attitude, seeking a conversation. "Sarah, I understand that you're sorry, and that you're going through a difficult time. I appreciate your desire to talk things out like adults. However, I must respect my lawyer's advice and maintain a certain level of distance for now. I hope you can understand. Sarah, it seems we've reached a point where we have nothing more to discuss. Our relationship has become strained, and I can't ignore the pain you've caused me. Trust is essential, and I'm struggling to regain it. I understand, but I still care for you deeply. I miss our connection, and I want to make things right. Remember our love, and consider our unborn child. As a father, you'll want to be involved in their life." I take a deep breath, acknowledging the love I once felt for her. "If my lawyer agrees, let's arrange a DNA test. I don't want to give you false hope of us resolving this, but if the child is mine, everything will change. I need to know." She excitedly replied, "Oh yes, honey. I just want a chance to make things right. We can still be a family. I may be older, but it won't matter if we're together. I promise to be the best mother and wife you'll ever see." I sighed. "Okay, Sarah. I'll talk to my lawyer and set it up." She gushed, "Thank you, darling. You won't regret this. I love you so much." As I hung up the phone, I knew it was cruel, but I had to put an end to this. She needed to know there was no going back. A week after discovering the baby wasn't mine, I decided to share the truth with Sarah. She was devastated and apologized repeatedly during our phone call. I ended the conversation and moved on. My lawsuit against the company led to a significant financial settlement, with the condition that I kept the details of my wife's affair confidential. My lawyer took a large portion of the payment, but I still had enough to get by. I sent information about the other 2 cheaters to the company, resulting in their termination. I considered finding out if the other woman was married, but I grew weary of the situation and chose not to pursue it further. At the final divorce settlement, I arrived at the courthouse and spotted my ex-wife. She was dressed in maternity clothes, her belly noticeably large. It seemed she had gained around 50 pounds. She walked unsteadily to her seat beside her lawyer, waving and giving a nervous smile in my direction. I merely nodded, focusing on the judge. The judge approved the divorce as outlined, granting me 60% and no alimony. I couldn't help but feel sympathy for Sarah, whose boyfriend had abandoned her. I'd always disliked him, considering him a worthless, irresponsible individual. Now, he was also a deadbeat dad. Despite their lawyer's best efforts, they couldn't locate him. As the gavel struck, our divorce was officially finalized. In the end, no one truly found happiness. Though I deeply cared for my wife and struggled with her loss, I realized that, at my age and with my depression, finding another meaningful connection might be impossible. Entering my 40s, I began to understand that forging a strong, loving relationship with a woman is not an easy task. Despite attempting to date again, nothing felt quite right. Eventually, I resigned myself to the idea that happiness might forever elude me. Sarah's life took a different turn after the divorce. As the settlement dictated, they sold their house and divided the proceeds, 60/40ths. This left her with enough to move into a small apartment. However, her lack of education limited her job opportunities, and she ended up working at a grocery store, performing menial tasks like sweeping floors and cleaning restrooms. Her parents tried to support her, but her eating habits suffered. She experienced a difficult loss due to health complications and age. I encountered her several months later, and she didn't seem her usual self. I once admired her appearance. However, now her face appeared to always have a somber expression. Her hair had a few more gray strands, her figure was slender and lacked definition. The once subtle wrinkles on her face were now more noticeable, giving her a mature appearance rather than her actual age. I didn't witness her share a smile. A year ago, I learned Sarah had found a partner. While I remain single and somewhat resentful, they don't live together. Their boyfriend is older, but they occasionally date. From what I understand, their relationship is going well. I no longer harbor any ill will towards Sarah, as she has faced her fair share of hardships. I wish her the best in finding someone who can truly love and trust her.